I'll call the meeting of the Carbon County Board of Commissioners to order. Please rise for a moment of silence, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. Almighty God, we ask for your guidance and directions as we come together to meet this morning. Grant us the strength to manage the challenges ahead and the wisdom to identify these as opportunities as we strive to serve our county, our state, our country. Please guide our hearts as we make decisions. Grant us the gift of an open mind, the willingness to learn, humility to accept the ideas of others. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
These proceedings are being recorded for the sole purpose of constituting the accuracy of written minutes. Tapes are reused, eliminating recorded records of these proceedings. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting held September 8th, 2022.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes, are there any guests concerning county business at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on. Okay,
Next item is the presentation by Mr. Andrew Cohill from Design 9, the broadband feasibility study.
would you like to join us up here? Make sure. Morning.
Good morning. I appreciate the time this morning. I just want to give you a brief report on the broadband work we've been doing over the last several months. I think one of the most interesting outcomes was the broadband survey. We conducted a survey of both residential and businesses in the county. We had a very strong response. People were clearly passionate about broadband and its importance in the county. Some of the relevant statistics, about 50% of the respondents were reasonably happy with their current broadband service, but 50%, another 50% were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So there's still some concern among the citizens and businesses about the quality and speed of their broadband service. About 30% said that the availability of broadband was affecting where they chose to live. So it extends beyond just being able to do what you want to do. People, where good broadband is available in the county is affecting where people decide to live. So that's something to consider going forward. There were a lot of comments, I think about 75 or 80 pages of written comments. The last question in the survey was open-ended and just simply asked people for if they had any comments, and many people wrote very passionate stories about some of their difficulties with broadband. There were also positive comments and people that felt that what they had was adequate. 88% of the respondents felt that the county should play some kind of role in facilitating better broadband. We are not recommending that the county become an internet service provider. We are not recommending that the county compete with the private sector. We think an appropriate role for the county is an advocate for broadband, to speak up on behalf of citizens and businesses that need better broadband, and to work cooperatively and collaboratively with the existing incumbent and competitive providers in the county. There is now and going to be, particularly in 2023, substantial funds available from both the state of Pennsylvania and the federal government for improvement of broadband infrastructure, and we would encourage the county and the providers in the county to vigorously go after those funds. This is another area where the county can play a very important role. Most of these funds, the individual internet service providers and cable and telephone providers can apply for those independently, but generally the counties have a voice in making a recommendation for those grant applications and can support those with letters of support. So the county going forward can have a very important role to play in working collaboratively with the internet service providers, the cable company, and the telephone companies to help them get better broadband throughout the county. I'm going to stop and take, there may be a few questions. I'm happy to take questions, but I know there's a very long agenda today, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Any comments or questions?
Well, I just wanted to say, I thank you for what you've done here. I mean, we have to know where we're going, and I think one of the things we do have to work with our providers, and I think that's where we needed it proven that we have to do that. And there are a couple providers in the county, it's just not one. And I think for us, I think like even our previous meetings, we got libraries that you think would have proper internet service and they don't. So for us to give a report or recommend whoever wants to go for these grants, and I don't think it's determined what avenue the grants are gonna come through. Is it better for them to do it? Is it better for us to do it? I think we're the bigger voice. I think that we get all the issues and it's complaints that are legitimate, but it's like you can't have a private business just stick $20,000 out for one person, you know, and I think maybe that's what these grants are for, and it might look like we're wasting money to provide to one person, but if we could get that money, and I think there's some areas where there's 136 people, which it looks like it's very minor to us, but it's major to them. So I think we have to work together with all the providers, and it doesn't matter which one it is, to make this better, and I think it's probably better to go through us. Sometimes the private organization is maybe a little bit tougher getting the grants, because I mean, you see it how like our grants are. We get a lot of grants, we don't use the money, but we pass it on. And I think that could be appropriately done with all these other providers too.
Andrew, I do have a handful of comments. First and foremost, you, Jack, and your team have been great to work with. Really responsive, and again, you and I have had a lot of contact in Jack, but I know a lot of folks behind the scenes, you know, bringing together all the data. I sincerely appreciate the flexibility that you all had with the multitude of town halls we held, schools, hospitals, businesses, libraries, first responders, the general public, I mean the COG, the Council of Government, so you really made yourself available to gather that information, and along that, not only do I believe you educated the Board of Commissioners, but you educated the public of what was out there, what isn't out there, and ways we could potentially move forward of using the funds that are now available. Now, the environment for funds has changed significantly since we started this process. We originally applied through the Appalachian Regional Commission with Carbon Chamber, who assisted us financially also, to have the study, because we thought as a county we were going to be doing this alone, out there seeking these grants, and this was really before, you know, the BEAD money became available. So while that environment has changed, this has prepared us significantly to be an advocate for existing internet or broadband providers and others who may want to enter into this area to ensure the and underserved are actually now provided the service that they need to telework, teleeducate, and have telemedicine opportunities. So I sincerely appreciate that. Importantly, the FCC, we know, I think they delayed the release of their updated data, what they're referring to as their fabric, which is in lieu of a census tract, is actually going to be who has or who could have internet by actual physical resident or building location. There might be a delay to that, but a lot of the information that we've already mapped with our GIS department that you provided from the survey is gonna allow us to challenge what we may see as inaccurate data, where the needs are in the county and where they are not. That's another significant, helpful aspect of this study. And I'll also mention in regards to advocacy, the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, in its annual conference last month, approved an addition to our PA Counties platform that calls for the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority to give counties an active role in the forthcoming grant process that they're developing. That is, for us to have a concur, non-concur with proposed projects that'll take place in Carbon County. And again, this document is gonna help us make better informed decisions should we be given the opportunity to have that active role in the process when it comes to investing in the infrastructure of Carbon County. So again, thank you so much, and I know this is gonna be, if not already, it's posted on our website for everyone. So thank you for providing that for us. And I'll turn over to Commissioner Osteen.
Yeah, my biggest concern now is with the county being the applicant, we certainly do not have the expertise nor the time to be writing the grants. We're already stressed out. It takes a certain degree of expertise, and I'm hoping we could pull all our providers together to give us that input. And I know we're going through it with other grants where the paperwork is horrendous. The requirements that you have to fulfill are horrendous. Sometimes there's one particular grant we're working on now that $250,000, it's starting to cost us more than we're getting because of all the paperwork and backup documentation and staff time, and even having a professional grant writer for us, and that it's really making it difficult on us, and sometimes it's just not even worth the effort. And I'm certainly hoping that these guidelines are out soon and that it is not too prohibitive in making those decisions or getting those grants out to the areas in particular that we can have an effect on most of the people in this county to improve the broadband. We'll never hit 100%. So I'll start, we're gonna allow the press at this time to ask their questions before our guest leaves. Ben?
In the study, how often, or maybe you can just elaborate on the difference or what you're hearing as far as quality versus affordability?
I think the primary complaint was speed, particularly upload speeds. There's a lot of the responses indicated that download speeds were okay, but upload speeds, if they were trying to work from home or do two-way video conferences for during the COVID crisis for distance learning or work from home was difficult because of the asymmetric upload and download speeds. There were a number of comments about prices, but I wouldn't say that stood out as the primary issue. I would say speed was one generally, and then there was a lot of people that have very poor. There's clearly in the study, people on DSL really felt like they were suffering. People that had cable type internet had speed complaints, but in general there were fewer complaints. So there was a noticeable broadband gap, if you will, between the unserved and underserved and what's called served.
But what regions of the county would you say were hit the hardest by this, or are being hit the hardest?
It's certainly the more rural areas. Most of the towns have cable internet, and it's for many people it was deemed generally accurate. But the farther you get out into the rural parts of the county, you had more people on DSL rather than cable internet, and those were the people that were having the most difficulty.
Were there options for higher speeds available there?
Well, Carbon County's interesting. In a lot of other areas, there's often some wireless internet service providers that are trying to service those more rural areas where cable internet's not available. Carbon County has a very limited amount of that, what's called fixed point wireless internet. So some of the rural areas here are at a disadvantage compared to other parts of Pennsylvania and other parts of the country.
Did the study recommend any solutions or anything like that, or is it just kind of the data?
Well, it's both. As I said, I think we're recommend, our primary recommendation is the county continue, as they have by commissioning this study, continue to be an advocate for broadband, to work collaboratively with the service providers. In terms of grants, the service providers, at least some of the federal grants, the service providers will be able to apply for those themselves, but they're going to get scored higher and are more likely to get funded if they work collaboratively with the county to make sure that community goals are met. At least some of the federal grant funds that we've already seen rules for, you can get an ISP can get a higher score if they can show they're assisting the community. For example, getting the libraries in Carbon County with better access. So there's certainly a tremendous opportunity in the next 12 to 18 months for the county and the providers to work together to solve some of these issues.
Wayne, this one's probably best suited for you. Has the grant process already begun, or you're just?
No, I don't think we've received any of the guidelines yet, or who can apply, or any of that information is not out there yet.
No, the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority literally just stood up in December. The executive director was just named about 3 months ago. He spoke to us at CCAP. He's establishing the team, establishing subcommittees, and then they'll go ahead and establish the grant process for Pennsylvania. Now that's of the initial $100 million tranche that there is. There's additional funds that are going to come out, also work through a grant process. However, it's all going to be based upon the new FCC data. It's basically, so it will be more directed. You know, the FCC, based upon their broadband data collection, their BDC determines that this area needs the investment. That's how the funds are going to be directed according to what's existing out there now.
I don't see this happening in a short period of time, over years. I'm hoping the funding doesn't have a deadline or anything to be, at least to be committed to a project or anything, because I just see it as taking maybe 2 years, maybe just to get started, if not a lot more. So I'm a little concerned about that as well.
I think you'll see also, I think we talked about affordability. Sometimes, and I don't think it was necessarily evident in the study because of the way the questions were asked. They're very concise and asked about what are you paying for internet or broadband. But a lot of people, again, the scuttlebutt, the social media posts, a lot of people confuse what they're paying for cable television, you know, because we're getting phone, cable, and internet all together. So when they see that $250 bill, they're thinking, you know, that's what you're paying for internet. Well, no, that's what you're paying for maybe a quote unquote a VoIP phone, cable, those 300 channels that we don't watch, you know, plus the broadband service. So that creates some confusion. Now, we haven't seen that come out in the study, but just from conversations with people.
And if you look in the book, like this is the study, the whole thing, there are actually maps in here of the served and underserved areas, so you'd have to look that up, and, I mean, all the information's in there.
Anything else, Ben?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Amy?
Commissioner, Lukasevich, you said this was going to be posted online, the report?
It's already available. Go to the website or social media. Nicholas was gonna have it up at 10:30.
Perfect, thank you. Has, the report been sent to the internet providers that are currently serving Carbon County so they can review it as well, or?
It's available on the website and social media for everyone.
And then, I know you were talking about grants, is it like just 2 grants, are there multiple grants gonna be out there, or like, what?
There is, I just looked at the Broadband Development Authority. I believe it is 5 different existing programs well over, and again, check, go to the DCED site for Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. I looked last night, I thought it was listing over $1 billion in different grants, that would be available over the long term, on, I think, 5 different programs. The primary program we're looking at is the BEAD program, which is the most
And
recent.
that's going to be 42 billion.
Yeah.
Is that just for Pennsylvania?
Oh, no,
That's
that's
for the whole
one is
country.
nationwide, but once you take those 5 different programs together, it's a large prediction.
And will it be highly competitive, I understand?
They are going to be competitive, and again, if you just do the math for the BEAD program, which is 42 billion, Pennsylvania's likely to get at least about $1 billion. And so you divide that by the number of counties in Pennsylvania, there's gonna be an opportunity for Carbon County to get a fair share of that money, and it would go a long way to solving the access issue in the rural parts of the county.
That's all I have, thank you.
Are these grants available like from the infrastructure bill that was passed?
Yes, well, as Commissioner Lukasevich indicated, there's going to be both federal and state grant funds available. Some of the federal money is going to be passed through to the states in entities like the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. Other states have other ways of distributing those funds, but there's also CDBG funds, which are federal housing and urban development funds. There's some other pots of money that are available, so there's not just one pot of money. They're from multiple sources, both at the federal and the state level.
You might remember, James, I believe it was within the last month or two, there was a local community, either Weatherly or Packer Township, that did make a request to use CDBG funds to connect a few homes or a couple homes in their municipality. So it's an example of using CDBG funds that are already available.
Any further questions by the news media? By the board? Hearing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Okay, we'll continue the department reports, budget transfers.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Excuse me, Ellie, we
Yeah.
can do the report in
Oh, I'm
advance.
sorry.
There were none.
No.
Sorry.
I have mine all written up, so I didn't forget about it.
Supplemental appropriations.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Expenditures, approval of payroll check numbers 74609 through 74642, and direct deposit check numbers 6045565 through 6045997 for the payroll paid through the payroll fund checking account for all county funds totaling $647,464.62. This is the payroll dated September 9th, 2022.
Motion to ratify.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Approval of check numbers 231021 through 231153 for expenditures to the general fund clearing account totaling $1,129,136.99.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
The treasurer's report?
Move to accept.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
The personnel report for county departments.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
The acknowledgements for courts and row offices.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Correspondence was received as listed. Copies will be made available to the press upon request. Animal Shelter, HVAC, for approval and execution. Proposal received from Snyder Hoffman Associates Incorporated of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, to provide a mechanical and electrical consulting engineering services for a new HVAC system for the animal shelter at a total cost of $17,600. Additional services would be billed as hourly rates as per the attached.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Archives, for approval and execution, a service agreement with Reynolds Business Systems of Allentown, Pennsylvania for the Archives Department. A Kofax technical support and software upgrade annual agreement effective November 1, 2022 through October 31st, 2023, $316.03. The hardware and software professional services annual agreement at $760. This is an increase of $37.05 from the prior year. The total cost is $1,076.03.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Advertising for approval. Authorize the advertisement of the second public hearing notice and Zoom meetings regarding the fiscal year 2022 CDBG funds and application for entitlement and non-entitlement communities.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
A bid award. A recommendation was received from the Director of Planning and Development to award the contract for the Community Development Block Grant bid opening on September 1, 2022. Mahoning Township, street improvements, Center Road, reconstruct and pave Woodlawn Drive to Maple Drive, fiscal years 2019, 20, and 21. To Recon Construction Services Incorporated of York, Pennsylvania, at the bid amount of $222,815.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Children and Youth for approval and execution. Fiscal year 2022-2023 purchase of service agreement submitted for Diacon Child, Family, and Community Ministries of Topton, Pennsylvania, as per the attached rates.
Motion approved and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
County policy for adoption. Policy number 2022-03, updating of the initial employment period policy to include jury duty as an exception for pay during the first 6 months of employment.
Motion adopt.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
For adoption of policy number 2022-04, updating of the jury duty and other court appearances policy, removing the completion of 6 months of employment requirements. This will ensure that all full-time, non-union employees will receive no loss in pay when they are called to serve for jury duty.
Motion approved.
Oh, second. No, second, that's good, Rob.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Planning and Development for approval and execution. Documents to be filed with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for the fiscal year 2022 CDBG grant application. This includes general applications, the CDBG disclosure report, the residential anti-displacement plan, and the grantee's statement of goals.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Sheriff's Office for ratification. A request was received from the Sheriff's Office to ratify submission of grant application for funding through the U.S. Department of Justice Assistance Bulletproof Vests Partnership Act to help offset costs of new ballistic vests for deputies in the Sheriff's Office. Estimated cost is $3,625. The grant will pay up to 50% of the cost.
Move to ratify.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Another grant funding, award of funding in the amount of $1,812.50 from the U.S. Department of Justice Assistance Bulletproof Vests Partnership Act to help offset the costs of the new ballistic vests for deputies in the Sheriff's Office. This is the agenda, for the agenda item number 22-482.
Move to approve.
Second.
Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
For ratification, request from the Sheriff's Office to ratify submission of grant application for funding through the U.S. Department of Justice Assistance Bulletproof Vests Partnership Act to help offset costs of new ballistic vests for deputies in the Sheriff's Office. The estimated cost is $4,350. Grant will pay up to 50% of the cost. This is the 2022 request.
Move to ratify.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Solicitors report?
Thank you. Seeking a motion for approval and execution of a banner request from St. John's Lutheran Church of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania for the 51st Annual Switchback Scamper 10K Run, 5K Walk on October 23rd, 2022. The banner to be displayed from October 9th until October 24th, 2022.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Mock Chunk Lake Park, seeking approval and execution of a special activities agreement from Heather Heffelfinger and Jennifer Wexler of Tamaqua, PA, for a beach wedding to take place Saturday, October 15th, 2022, from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
For the Clerk of Courts, seeking motion for approval and execution of an agreement with TransUnion of Boca Raton, Florida for TLO XP program at a cost of $130 per month for a 12 to 36 month period.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
For the Correctional Facility, seeking motion for approval and execution of an agreement with Prime Care Medical Incorporated of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with modifications to the Business Associate and Qualified Service Organization Agreement as recommended by me, the County Solicitor.
Approve and execute. Made the motion. I'll make the motion.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
I don't know if I trust it.
Right.
That guy. For parking lots and metered parking, seeking a motion for approval and execution of addendum number 1 to the agreement with T2 Systems Incorporated to assess and collect fines and citations for violations of certain laws, ordinances, and/or regulations. The term of the agreement will be for 3 years with an automatic renewal for 1 year unless written notice is provided at least 90 days prior to the expiration of the current term. During the term of the addendum, citation collection services will collect a flat fee of $10 per each referred account collected.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Resolutions, seeking a motion to adopt resolution 22026 for authorizing submission of a grant application with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Municipal Assistance Program grant to update the Carbon County Comprehensive Plan and Greenway Plan.
Motion to adopt resolution.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
And would you like that resolution read into the record, or just take it as read?
It's read. Want to read it? Doesn't matter.
Well, it's short.
It'll be
I'll read
presented
it.
to them on Tuesday
Okay.
evening at a program.
Okay, I'll just read it. It's fairly short. Whereas the County of Carbon will be undertaking a project to update the existing Carbon County Comprehensive and Greenway Plan, and whereas the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development makes available grants and aid to such projects through the Municipal Assistance Program, now therefore be it resolved that the Carbon County Board of Commissioners of, and whereas Paul Mariss has been an active firefighter with the Lehighton Fire Department since joining in August of 1972. And whereas Paul Mariss has served on numerous committees such as fire prevention and apparatus replacement. And whereas Paul Mariss previously was an EMT with Lehigh Fire Company No. 1 and the Lehighton Ambulance Association. And whereas Paul Mariss has also served as the treasurer for the Firemen's Relief Fund and currently holds the position of safety officer. And whereas over the years, Paul Mariss has volunteered his time in other local organizations. He was a coach for the Franklin Township Little League from 1988 until 2000. He ran summer youth activities for the Lehighton Recreation Commission. He was the chairperson of numerous picnic and fundraiser committees for SS Peter and Paul Church School, and has been a lector for SS Peter and Paul Church for over 50 years. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the members of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Carbon offer sincere thanks to Paul Mariss for his great humanitarian spirit and effort, his unyielding dedication to the fire department, and the great impact he has had and continues to have on the residents of Lehighton and the surrounding area, and adopts this resolution in his honor and as a means of documenting his efforts in the history of Carbon County, adopted by the Carbon County Board of Commissioners this 16th day of September 2022. No, it's 15th. Okay, sorry. That was an unnecessary correction. And lastly, under Tax Claim Bureau, seeking a motion for approval and execution of an agreement dated May 3rd, 2018 with Infocon Corporation of Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, to utilize Infocon Corporation to host the Tax Claim Bureau's software system at a monthly fee of $1,076.10, which is a 2% increase. Annualized, that's an increase of $253.20. It's actually $21.10 per month. The annual software and professional services cost of $2,400 and the VPN fee of $150 per month remains the same.
Move to approve and execute.
Second.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Any further business? Hearing none, Commissioners' reports, Mr. Honor?
I'm gonna save it for next week. I just do wanna say, like, we are doing work at the animal shelter, and we're doing offices. Hopefully we'll have our clerical person up there within like the next week or two. But, I'll be reporting more on that next week, and it'd be good to make a plan on next week, making a visit up there.
Commissioner Lukasevich?
Yeah, there was a comment made, I got it out of the Times News, made here by the Register of Wills, Clerk of Orphans Court, in regard, the quote, what have you done, you being the Board of Commissioners, to bring industries in here, be that Carbon County, to help offset taxes? What have you, the Board of Commissioners, done to build our county for the better? You know, from time to time, it's incumbent upon us to defend our positions, defend ourselves as a board. And tied to taxes is also employment, ensuring industry is indeed here, promoting it, advocating for it, and providing resources. So I want to bring to the attention of the public, but especially the row officer who made this comment. You know, in January 2020, when this board assumed its position, unemployment was at 5.6% in Carbon County. Today, the unemployment rate is at 4.7%. We've had a net gain of 500 additional employed Carbon County residents. We've had a reduction of unemployed over that same time of 300 individuals, and with a 400 person increase in the labor force. We did indeed lose New England Motor Freight, KME. KME was expected. New England Motor Freight wasn't unexpected. But in New England Motor Freight today, we have Estes is in there. At KME, we have the railroad, Reading, Blue Mountain, and Northern has purchased the property. And we have a pending notice of another business coming in to that property. During the same period, we have 2 new hospitals in Carbon County. And again, like the railroad, they are nonprofit or are not taxed on their property, but it's the business that they bring. the individuals they bring into this county that spurs development. Someone such as the Register of Wills, who ran as a Republican, should know that as Republicans, governments don't create jobs. We create an environment for jobs to be created and for industry to provide opportunities for individuals. In addition, I mentioned the railroad. We did sell the railroad, but as part of that, this county and Lansford has received millions of dollars towards economic development. Right now, Carbon County has $1.593 million in an economic development fund that we continue to look at to see how we can best utilize that to further development in Carbon County and balancing it, with the natural draw to this area, which is our natural environment. So we are doing considerable amount, not simply to bring industry, but balance it with our natural environment and to ensure that county residents have opportunities, that individuals who migrate into Carbon County from other places have a reason to live here and have opportunities to work. So I take offense to the comment to think that we have been passive in our pursuits. As a further indication, we provide both in-kind and direct funding to Carbon County Economic Development Corporation, a county employee, plus a grant of $78,000. And there's no one who can dispute the positive work that the Carbon Chamber has done to promote industry here in Carbon County. That's all I have.
Just real quick along those lines, we are waiting for confirmation on a meeting with Bulldog, meeting the owner in the near future, and how we may help them through possible funds through the sale of the railroad. And we are waiting for a price quote right now, or an application for another facility or an addition to an authority. So, yeah, we are doing a little bit here and there, so. Okay, that's all I have today. News media, do you wanna ask questions before we start the retirement board?
I have one question, about item 2249. Is that like a new security service or something that's gonna collect fees, or is that just standard procedure and you're just updating it?
That's
About the,
Oh, Q2, okay. Yeah, all right. So what has happened, we're trying to ensure, we're re-looking at our parking ordinance right now. The solicitor and parking director is conducting a review. And within the last month or two, we discussed how we could more effectively and efficiently collect delinquent citations and inactive citations. And in consultation with the local magistrate, who assumes a significant burden when we have to pass these on to the judiciary system, we came to the conclusion it would be much more effective to have a third party to go ahead and do the collections directly. So no longer will citations at some point go to the magistrate. As soon as they're issued, they exceed the time that's allowed to make payment, they will go to T2, who has a third party and we use for our enforcement, will go ahead and start the collection process. Importantly, they have access and agreements with states outside of Pennsylvania, so we can facilitate the collection process. And that's an area we've had significant challenges with, because we had no way to collect funds from New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, where a significant number of our visitors come from, and of course corresponds to the number of fines, citations that are issued.
That's correct. That's the big reason for doing this, really, is to get those from out of state that we couldn't get to before. So hopefully this will increase that revenue or the success of the collecting on the fines. Why should only Pennsylvania residents pay for it and let the outside residents park for free? That's not right, so.
And we do have a backlog of over 300 to be collected, and they're gonna jump right on that.
Anything else? Katie?
To piggyback on that, do you guys have a ballpark figure of how much is delinquent in that?
I believe it was just around 10,000, but if you call down or walk down and talk to Angelia, she can give you the direct amount.
That's
She
just recent,
Right.
over the years, I think
Yeah.
we've lost a lot more than that.
Yeah, yeah. But that was from the time, again, from January 19th of last year through now. But she has the specific numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, with the Palm Risks, resolution, when will that be presented to me?
He'll receive that on Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock at the fire company, South Third Street behind.
May I get a copy of that? Just, you can email it to me. And then with regards to the vests, do you know how many vests the sheriff's office will be getting through those grants?
I don't remember seeing the number.
Five.
Five?
They have a lifespan on those as well. Every so many years, they have to be replaced.
Okay, that's all I have, and thank you.
Mr. Ben,
I'm good today.
you're good? I did forget to mention one thing under my report, and that I just wanted to, and doesn't have to be in the minutes, but I wanted to certainly thank the news media and all the people that took out in ads in our program, all the people that stood out there in the rain for the dedication and memorial service, all the great support we had from the community, news media, businesses, fire, police, EMS, et cetera, and what a great show of support for the emergency services. And we didn't get a good exact number, but it was well over 200 people. Had the weather been nice, we were prepared with transportation buses, alternate parking sites, et cetera, but and fire, police to help. But unfortunately, it rained, but turned out to be a very good day. But I just wanted to express my gratitude to everyone that did make it, and I understand why a lot of them didn't make it, but thanks for all the support, and our work is only beginning. We have to finalize our policies, procedures, and permits, or, the scheduling, things like that. Got a long way to go yet. And it should be done. We had a construction meeting yesterday. Should just about be completely done in 3 weeks with paving, fire linings, et cetera. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Okay, all right. Okay. If you're leaving or you're staying for the retirement board, Sarah has a real interesting report for us today to keep us awake. So Sarah, if you would join us, you might as well come up now. So. Okay, call the meeting of the retirement board to order, and I'll turn it over to our secretary, Mark Zverchek, controller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning.
morning.
First, I will seek a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held August 18th, 2022.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Zelinka?
Yes.
Mr. Svercek, yes. Mr. Arner?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Yes.
Mr. Notstein?
Yes.
Any guests concerning retirement board business? Report of executive sessions, there weren't any held. Next, I will seek a motion to ratify the warrant. That includes checks number 40836 to 40846 and direct deposits 7018327 to 7018729 for the month of August.
Motion to ratify.
Second.
Mr. Zelinka?
Yes.
Mrs. Faircheck, yes. Mr. Arner?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasevich?
Point of clarification, Mark, 729 or 728?
There's always an extra
Oh, that's
for the direct deposit.
Yeah,
There's-
okay.
Right below there. Yeah, no
Yes.
yeah, no problem. And Mr. Notstein,
Yes.
thank you. Retirement activity report for the month of August. It included 9 retirement refunds. 1 retiree passed, Carol Gruber. I always like to express on behalf of the retirement board our condolences to Mrs. Gruber's family. The total disbursements for the month of August totaled $519,282.98, and the portfolio value as of 8/31/22 was $83,192,439.87. I always like to provide a most recent update as of last Friday, 9/9 of '22. We were at $84,212,784. And Mrs. Wilson will give an update later as of the June 30th number. Correspondence, I did not have any correspondence. Solicitors report,
No report.
thank you. Now we'll turn it over to our investment consultant, Sarah Wilson of Marquette Associates.
Good morning. It's nice to see everybody today. So we're going to talk about the second quarter because I think it's, we're doing the review, but we'll do a little bit of the market update. Nothing's really changed that much, but we'll be able to talk about that. And please jump in if you have any questions. So if you open the your quarterly books, we go to tab 1, Exhibit 1, just page 7. I want to remind you that we are doing our 2022 symposium. You can get online, and it's actually a great event. And if you do have, I know you're very busy, but if you do have an hour or so, we've got some great speakers. We have the research team. Also, you can get onto the YouTube channel and look at the halftime report if you want to see what's we're saying about the market. And as you know, we're celebrating our 36th year in business and 130 employees. You can see that we've actually hired 2 more performance analysts and client analysts in the Westchester office, which serves as you. So we've been pretty busy and we've been growing. It's interesting that when you look at COVID in 2020, because we're going to talk a little bit about that 2020 number, we've actually, because of this market, have really started to put more performance analysts, more client analysts in there, so you know, be more hands-on. If we go to Exhibit 2, let's just talk a little bit about what happened with the market in the second quarter. And we look at real GDP, and that's page 10. And you can see year over year, you can see the gold bar, and then you can see quarterly. And we go to that 2020. So we look at that, and this is really kind of where we remember where the market, you know, really dipped. And then we've seen this growth, and we've actually had some nice growth in the last 2 years. Now we're starting to see it dip again. And a slowdown in private inventory investment detracted 2% points from the headline number, while residential investment contracted by 14% amid raising mortgage rates. We'll talk a little bit about that. We look about what's happening with jobless claims, and we know that the numbers have actually been better than estimates. We know that last week the numbers were at 213,000, which was better than what we've expected, but we've actually looked at the continuous jobless claims, and you look at that below, you see that on bottom of page 10, you see that graph. Look at the continuous jobless claims, and we know it went up and then it spiked back down. One thing that they see is, you remember, the jobless claims are very important when we talk about, are we in a recession? We'll touch on that. Interestingly enough, we do have to keep in mind that when we look at all these jobless claims, we're coming off of 2020. As you know, as a county, you know, a lot of you possibly had to lay off people when we were in COVID, when we were in lockdown. So when you look at that number, it's a little bit harder for us to gauge that number when we talk about that and concerns of recession. We talk about inflation. We look at page 11, and we know that, and this will explain some of the performance that happened in June. We know that inflation reached 9.1% over the past year through June. So that was year over year. And then what's happened with inflation we've seen in that's really been kind of moving the market is we saw through August inflation went up, and they didn't expect it to. It went up 0.10, so it was 8.3 year over year. And when we look at what's kind of driving that, you know, because we know prices are going up, and they thought inflation would kind of go down a little bit. But we've had, remember trying to buy a car or trying to get your car fixed in the last 12 months? They kept on saying, you know, there's no parts. Well, a huge amount of inventory came back. So we've really seen car sales spike in August because of that there. So that's been part of that. And we look We expect inflation, a 10-year break-even inflation ended the quarter at 2.29, down from a peak of 3.11 in April. So we're kind of struggling with this inflation. We know gas prices went down. We were expecting, with mortgage rates going up, you expect things to kind of, start going down. I thought this was very interesting. Pittsburgh is the number 3 most expensive places to rent an apartment in the United States versus what you make in income. So you could say, California and everything, New York and everything, but incomes are different. So I thought that was a really interesting thing that's come out. And then we look at short-term interest rates. We know, I thought was very interesting is when the Fed spoke a couple weeks ago, they said, we're going to raise rates. We know they're going to raise rates. They were all on board. We saw all the notes from them. They said, it's possibly 0.50 or 0.75 on raising of the rates. And the market still really reacted to that. There's a lot of people in this market that believes that what is happening with the rates is that we took them down so fast and aggressively. Now we're putting them so fast up. It's really causing this very volatile market. And, in the last couple of days, it's always saying, we'd like to do an update for you. I could sit here and it could change every half hour and what this market's doing. So we really kind of want to find, we know it's going to be a volatile market. We just would like to kind of find its feet in there. And we look at the bottom of that, and we show the short-term interest rate chart on the bottom of page 11. And every quarter, it's interesting. So the Fed says, we're going to go up. We're going to raise a couple more times. We expect next week that they'll raise about 75 basis points. But you look at the future markets and they're saying, okay, we know you're going to raise, but we don't think, and then we think you're going to take it down because you can't sustain this. And when we talk about that in interest rates and mortgage, and we worry about, what's going to happen with the retail market, because we know commercial real estate, the real estate investment that you are in, is actually posted a positive return this year. But we look at mortgage rates. And I remember the day, and some people probably do in this room, that you were paying double digits for mortgage rates. It happens. So at the beginning of the year, we were at 3.29, which is really, bottom of there. Right now, with these more interest rates going up, we're at 6%. 6% is actually not that bad, but when you're used to paying almost nothing, the problem, what we see with happening when we look at real estate, is that it's more expensive. It's more expensive to get to work. We see this inflation. So the young consumer, the first-time home buyers, are going to have a harder time saving that down payment. 2 years ago, when COVID hit and we had those stimulus checks, the American consumer actually saves part of those. You've always heard, people were out buying big TVs and everything. They were actually saving. We actually saw a spike in the American consumer savings. So now, this summer, when we look at what triggered some of those inflation, is that, we have to also keep in mind everything has started to open up again. People are traveling. We've heard, of all the nightmares on airplanes this summer and everything. So the consumer last year was still worried. There were some COVID issues that people weren't, we're now back in full force. So that obviously is going to kind of spike inflation as well, because we keep going back to that March 2020 number of shutdown to there. So it hasn't really been able to balance itself out correctly. If we turn the page, we look at what's happening with the global economy. And I find this is an interesting chart. Pat in our office, some of you have met Pat, he actually found this. And when we look at that, we also want to look at Europe. We want to see what's happening globally, because as an investor, this portfolio and all of our portfolios have exposure to international and global, and you're infected as a consumer. And Sweden has always led the way when we look about what's happening in economic activity in the Eurozone. So we look at the ratio of new orders in that on inventories, and we see that they're starting to contract. We know that, obviously England's having a huge issue. They're trying to put some monetary policies in place. We look at what's happening with their skyrocketing energy costs there. And then China credit. So last quarter, we talked about what was happening in China. And China said at the beginning of the year, we're in a massive lockdown. And they literally locked down because of COVID. So they have had a very difficult time coming back. So they have decided to put $1.1 trillion into infrastructure. So, and we know that China is such a huge exporter to us. We're a huge importer of goods in China. So that is one thing to look at that. And then we talk about that when we look at global bonds. When we look at central banks taking interest rates higher to reduce inflation, global bonds have entered a bear market. When we talk about what has happened in this market, it was the first time since the aggregate bond index since 1970 that it started that was negative, and it was double-digit negative. So we've hit, and this quarter through 6/30, we have hit a historic, it's only happened 3 times, that the bond market and the U.S. domestic equity market was down double digits. So we are in, it's been a very tough market, and you can see that on page 13 when we look. Obviously, commodities for the year were up 24%. Global listed infrastructure was up 2.9. You do have actually some exposure to that. But we look, there was really nowhere to go, nowhere to hide in this market. You look at U.S. equities were down 16. International down 14, U.S. bonds down 4.7 for the quarter. And years ago, we always said, fixed income bonds, those were the safe place to be. So they have really kind of struggled. We go to page 14, if you'd like to turn there. And we just look, one of the things that you're going to really see in your performance is value stocks, top growth stocks for the second consecutive quarter. So when we see a volatile market, or we see a market going down, we know that usually value stocks will outperform the market. And in the last 16 quarters before that, growth stocks have outperformed. So we have seen a little bit of lag on performance. We take a tiny bit of a value tilt. We believe that the portfolio is because it needs to be defensive in a down market. This is a pension fund. We want to try and preserve as much as we can going down there. And then page 15, I wanted to put this in. I think we have done this. We talk about, are we in a recession? And what is a recession? And, there's been a lot of controversy when you talk about what a recession is. That some people say we are in a recession. Some people say because of the jobless numbers, we aren't. We believe that we're probably, when we look at it, we're probably going to see a recession in the next 12 months. But we talk about what has happened in the market. And according to the Bank of America, the S&P 500 index has experienced 15 bear markets post-World War II. The average drawdown is 32%. So let's go to that on the top of page 15. You look at that chart, and you can see, I think this is interesting. So we look at 3/31/2000 and 10/31/2002. It was down 50%, and we hit a recession. Remember, that was 9/11 as well. So, there were some huge changes with that market. And then we look at 10/31/2007 to 3/31/2009, and you can sit there and see we were down 57%, and that was obviously the 2008 and the mortgage crisis. And then we look at 2018, remember, was a negative year, and we had a negative thing. I think what is so interesting out of this, we look at 2/28, the bottom line, 2020 to 3/31/2020, and we were down 35% drawdown. Those were 4 days. That was when COVID kind of kicked. And remember, the market just went crazy. We talked about that the 5 stocks moved the market going down. They moved the market going back. So for those 4 days, the market had a return of negative 35.4. And they said, okay, we hit a recession. Well, it's very hard to think about that with a recession. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning with COVID. Because the market was shut down. The economy was shut down. Everywhere was shut down. So it's very hard to gauge that. So even though we are through S&P has had a maximum drawdown through June, the S&P 500 of 25%, we're still probably looking at what we're calling a bear market, and it has been changing. We know this week we've had a very tough time in the market. And then at the bottom, you can just see we talked a little bit about high yields and bonds. And remember, we did put you in to a high yield bond in May. We 2 years ago, we saw that spreads were really good at the end of 6:30, and it was 5%, and then we moved it down to 3%. That was part of being the OCIO. It was in your investment policy, and we got a little bit of a nice return with the negative and the rest of the market. So at the end of 6:30, we thought, okay, spreads are kind of going the way we want. We'll get into that. Well, 3 weeks later, we said absolutely not. And so that is one of the things about, when you've decided to move over to OCIO, we can move in and we can move out, and we have moved out there. Are there any questions on the market? Let's go to the page that looks at how you've done. I have to report it's not as bad as the market, but it is what it is. So if we go to page 22, we can look at what the market was. The market value as of June 30th was 82.6 million. We look at the market value as of close of last week, which was September 9th, was at 84.2. So you've had a little bit of gain. We know July was positive. August was a little bit negative. September kind of looked like it was going to be positive, and it's just, we'll see where it ends up. You had a negative return of 10.1, but for the quarter, your policy index did negative 11.2. You outperformed by 110 basis points, and that's exactly what we wanted this portfolio to do. We look at year to date, you had a negative return of 13.8, but you relative policy index was 14.5 negative. So we've seen outperformance in a negative time frame. And you have to remember, since inception, the fund has annualized a return of 6.4, that's since we've been with you, and a net investment gain of 35 million. So you've really seen some nice growth over there. We looked at positive attribution for the quarter. We'll go look a little bit at what the market said, but your asset allocation really helped. Remember, you've made a lot of changes in the last 12 to 18 months in asset allocation, and that's been very, very positive for you. Your outperformance by U.S. equity manager DWK, and that was a manager we put in about 2 years ago, and then your active global and your non-U.S. equity managers. Negative attribution was just fixed income. There is really a very hard environment for any fixed income manager. I mean, they were slightly off. There is nothing they can do, and we know your active manager, C.S. McKee, has done a very nice job for you over the years. Real estate had a return of 3% for the quarter, and for the trailing 12 months, you had a return of 27.9%. That was one of the things that you have put in there, and that has really made a change. And then I find this is interesting. So what we did is we put in for redemption submitted for 9/30/22 in real estate. You know that you take out money, you have all those benefit payments, and it was probably the first time since being with McCarthy in the 11 years, we actually sat there and couldn't figure out where we were going to take money out to pay payments. All right, let's turn to page, let me get your performance. Okay, let's turn to page 40. We can look at just a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about your performance. You can see that your fund composite for the trailing 12 months was down 8.7, but for the market was down 9.5. We highlighted GWK has done well for you. They had a great first quarter. They are under the total U.S. equity composite. They were down 14 versus down 17. And they've actually, since we put them in May of 2020, they've annualized 12.7%. So that's your active manager within your U.S. equity composite. And look at your global piece, ABA Global. Interestingly enough, they did very well for the quarter. And then we put them in August 2020. and they were down, if you look at that number, they're down 21 versus the market of 18.4. We pulled them. We said, you know what? They're not doing what we want to do. And how about that? Usually will take, 3-4 years, but we made that decision. We did that last week in the investment committee, and we actually put them, that money into the Fidelity Total International Index. So this is where, yet again, if you had to make that decision, we'd have to get 3 people in here. You would have to decide to fire them and everything else like that. So, we have been, sometimes I can look at these portfolios and I can see the same people there, the same managers for 5-6 years, and we won't make a change. But when we need to make a change, we just do it. So we did do that. And then Artisan has struggled a little bit, but we like them. They're global opportunity funds, and they are a growth fund. And as we said, value stocks are outperforming right now. MFS, low volatility global equity, has done well for you and outperformed. And they've actually averaged, you've had them in September 2015. That's at the bottom of the global equity composite. And they've done an annualized 8.2 versus 7.5 there. We look at your non-US equity composite, and that's on page 41. And we look at Wellington. We put in Wellington in January 2022. They have done well for the quarter. When we did put them in, they were just off a little bit. It was just the timing of them, but we're very comfortable with them. And Harding and Loevner as well. They're small, international small cap. We look at real estate. Morgan Stanley Prime Property Fund. You've gone into that. You've consistently annualized since inception 10.8% since October 2018. And when we funded that, we funded it out of fixed income. We also funded it out of equity to take some of the volatility out of equity. So if you think about it, 50% of that was funded out of fixed income in a negative market. So you have done over the trailing 12 months, 27.9%. We know that they struggled a little bit in 2020. In COVID, we've seen that all real estate managers, not only them, have made a lot of changes. They've gotten out of the retail, they've gotten out of some of the office space, and they've really gone, what's driving commercial real estate right now in these funds are actually storage units and industrial. You think about, the Amazon warehouses and everything. I mean, they've really gone into there. We look at infrastructure. Infrastructure, unfortunately, was just where you've gone in. We got you in January 20 of this year. It was negative 6.9 versus the infrastructure of negative 7.5. It's just what it was. It's more on where the market is. We turn the page and we go to U.S. Fixed income, and just for the quarter, you're a little bit off on there. C.S. McKee was right on the market, and then they outperformed by 0.10 basis points year to date. We look at Lord Abbett High Yield, which we've actually moved out of there. And then we've put you in, we made a decision to put you in Baird Core Plus Bond Fund, which actually is an intermediate core plus bond fund. So as we see rates are going to start going up, you want your managers to be able to lock into some of these rates extending out. So when we look at short-term rates right now, the managers, and 3-4 years ago, remember everybody said interest rates are going to go up, interest rates are going up, and they didn't. Then they went back down, and they went back down. So managers stayed very short, meaning that they didn't want to go buy a 5-year bond at a very low interest rate. But they still have to be invested. So now, for them to sit there, when we look at those short-term managers, they're going to have to wait till those become mature. They can't just go sell them. Why would you buy a bond that's going to pay 1% when you buy a bond that's going to pay 3% right now? So we've done the Core Plus that we've kind of shifted a little bit in that to allow that the managers now to start going out and having a little bit of an extended maturity date. And then if you turn the page, the last page, the fee summary, I just want to go over, you were all in for fees, the investment management fee of all those managers active. Remember, we've got private placements are 42 basis points. So, we've actually gone in and looked at putting into some of those CITs that were able to reduce the fees. Are there any questions? So just going forward, I know, everybody says, where do you think the market's gonna go, what's it gonna do? And, I'd love to be able to tell you that. You're well diversified. I think it's gonna be a hard next 12 to 18 months. I think if the market finds its feet, meaning if it was just kind of a little bit of a negative, we'd almost be happy with that. We look at what's going to happen with the Fed, but I think we know what the Fed's gonna do. They have said, and they're all on board to lowering rates. It's just how the market's gonna react to that. We're gonna look at what's gonna happen with inflation, and we're gonna see what's gonna happen in the next 12 to 18 months. I think that you're gonna see some up months, and then you're gonna see some down months. And I think most everybody else would like to see some of this volatility. August, I've been working at Merrill Lynch. I started Merrill Lynch in 1994. August was great. All the traders were off to the Hamptons. Nobody did anything. They were at their beach houses. This was the busiest August we have seen in years, just with trading, volatility, and everything else. So it's really kind of a different year when we look at this. We also know that there are midterm elections coming up, and that will determine some. When we look at policy, elections after everybody knows where everything's going, it's kind of settled down, and then we'll go into presidential. And we know usually in the year of presidential elections, the market kind of slows down a bit as well. So I think these midterms, hopefully the Fed has more clear guidance on what they're going to do, and we hope that they don't get too aggressive, that they have to go too aggressive down. Any questions?
Yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you again.
Very good.
Always like to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we'll look anything under new business. I don't have anything. Anything under old business? Anything under further business?
Meeting adjourned. I forgot old business.
I sent 2 more
Yeah, you know
books.
what?
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
realized that.
'cause I
I'm
think,
so
I
sorry.
think Bob wanted to,
Okay,
or,
so do we
who-
want-
no,
One, two.
actually her. Like, yeah, no, because
So
I mean,
should I add like 3 more?
like, you're taking minutes,
Okay,
I think
I
you should
noticed
have
that,
it.
and I realized that, I'm so sorry.
No, but you should still in case
Yeah.
there's something, if somebody
we'll do
records
3,
something that you
okay.
haven't.
I'll add 3 more copies. I'm
Hey, I
so
do have a
sorry.
question for you.
Yes.
Was this book designed, did you have that shirt on today?
No,
when
I
they
didn't
make
think
the
about
design.
it. But you know what's even interesting? This was the dress I wore for my headshot for the office. Unbelievable.
I noticed details.
Oh, I'll have to get a new.
I did trim work, so I watch everything.
No, I had to think I was. Well, no, it's so
I
funny because
do.
we do so
I like,
much
I'm
work
sitting there, I'm
from
looking
home
like,
now.
why is that
When
guy
you
out of
leave,
place
it's
up
really
there?
fantastic.
Like, I notice
When you
everything.
find these suits and stuff, and then the whole week being through COVID, I'm like trying.
Well, my wife tells me I'm a sloppy person.
Like,
I don't know how that is.